It's prime for debate. Amazon's decision to settle its new headquarters in New York. It's a tale of two views.
I think it's exciting for Amazon. I know it's exciting for the state of New York.
The Amazon deal is bad. The Amazon deal should not go through.
Will it be an economic boon or a boondoggle? We'll hear from both sides of the argument.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. On the surface, the deal looks quite promising. An economic bonanza for the city and state, with the creation of tens of thousands of jobs and generating millions of dollars in revenue. New York will be one of Amazon's new East Coast headquarters. But for many of the residents who live in Long Island City in the shadow of the new behemoth, the deal is not welcome. They fear a population explosion that would put a strain on their community. And there's the question of just how much the city and state had to shell out to lure Amazon here.
It's being called the biggest new jobs deal in New York City and New York State's history.
You can't achieve what you want to achieve if you're not in New York City. And Amazon has now put the biggest exclamation point in the world on that.
Amazon announcing it's splitting its second headquarters between Long Island City and Arlington, Virginia. Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Cuomo jointly celebrating the victory, pointing to the numbers that tell the story.
This was unprecedented.
The New York headquarters will start hiring next year, creating at least 25,000 new jobs by 2029 and up to 40,000 jobs by 2034, with an average salary of $150,000. The total economic impact projected to be $186 million. Amazon investing at least $2.5 billion in its riverfront space.
I believe there's going to be a positive synergy with many of the other companies, Cornell Tech, Google, Squarespace. So I think it's exciting for Amazon. I know it's exciting for the state of New York.
The city and state are giving upwards of $3 billion in tax credits and grants and expect to generate a total of $27.5 billion in revenue. They say for every dollar, they'll make 9 back. But not all city leaders are in agreement. City Council Speaker Corey Johnson saying in a statement that the City Council's exclusion from negotiations is extremely troubling. State Senator Mike Gianaris represents the Long Island City community, and he's not happy with the deal either.
The Amazon deal is bad. The Amazon deal should not go through, and I am very much opposed to this Amazon deal that was announced today in all its forms.
Now, Senator Gianaris isn't alone. A Queens Assemblyman already has announced plans to introduce a bill to kill the deal, and the City Council is reviewing its legal options to challenge it. Amazon's announcement this week has fired up the passions of people on both sides of the issue. Catherine Wild is president and CEO of the Partnership for New York, a business organization. She does support the move, calling it a breakthrough event that will solidify the city's future as a leader in the world's fastest growing industry. City Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer, he's outraged that the deal was made secretly without the consultation of the council. He wants a review of the deal. Good to have both of you with us. So let me say, you see it as a breakthrough and you see it as an assault on the community. Let's hear from you first, Catherine. Why do you see this as a breakthrough?
Well, since the mid-90s, we've been looking in New York City to diversify our economy off of our overdependence on Wall Street. And the area that's the fastest growing sector in the city and in the world is technology. But what we haven't had in the last 20 years, as we've built our tech company, we've had lots of startups, smaller companies, we've had Google and Facebook and others move some marketing and other jobs here, but we haven't had a large tech headquarters. So this is an opportunity for New York to really establish its creds as a global tech capital. If we can have a headquarters of this giant company that everybody is looking to as sort of the future of an industry, it makes a big statement for New York being a serious player in what is, again, the fastest growing industry and where you have the jobs of the future.
Councilman, it certainly seems reasonable, understandable. Why do you feel this is an assault on the community?
Well, no one is against jobs in the city of New York, but we as legislators and we as a community have to ask the tough questions about this deal and point out the problems with this deal. First of all, nearly $3 billion thrown at one of the wealthiest corporations in the world that's owned by literally the richest man in the world. We should, as a city, I think all cities in this country should be thinking about whether or not we should be engaging in practices like that. All companies want to be in New York and should want to be in New York, and we shouldn't have to subsidize them in this way. And then second, the process the governor and the mayor engaged in was completely secretive, excluded all levels of government, all the local elected officials, and then have chosen this path of a general project plan to bypass meaningful community review and input. That's outrageous. And then third, of course, is the impact on the community itself, our infrastructure issues which exist. The deal and the memorandum of understanding that we've actually all seen so far does not address these questions in really meaningful ways. In fact, the community is fearful that Amazon could overwhelm what exists today in Long Island City and the surrounding communities.
A lot of the issues. Catherine, did you provide any insight as to why this was so secretive, why the community and why the council and others were not involved in the negotiations?
Well, I think that this was a year-long national competition in which 238 cities and states were competing to try and get this headquarters. And Amazon wanted to make sure that in terms of the information they were sharing with the city and states and the negotiations, they wanted to keep it confidential. And then, as I understand it, when news leaked about 3 weeks ago, not from New York, but from elsewhere, that they were zeroing in on New York, Dallas, and Arlington, that they decided suddenly that they better just quickly announce what they were doing rather than perpetuate the process and have it defined in the newspapers. And so they gave a very short timeline to New York State when they said, we're going to announce. And that I think part of this is just a function of the process got a bit out of control at the end. I do want to say on the competition side, New York was competing again. Any company that's looking at where they're going to locate, that's going to be a big presence, that's going to need lots of local government actions and state government actions, any company in that position is going to want to see that the city and state have some skin in the game, that they're really committed. And we did not offer the most subsidies. New York was not at all at the top of the subsidy offering list. Other states offered.
I have a follow-up to that, but I think he doesn't buy that answer.
Yeah, well, let me just say, with respect to the privacy of the process, we're talking about public dollars here. These are public monies. These are taxpayer dollars. And when the governor and the mayor conspire to provide public money to the wealthiest man in the world, excluding community elected officials, that is a problem, and that is outrageous.
Okay, we have to take a break. We'll come back and continue our conversation talking about Amazon coming to New York. We'll be right back. Amazon's decision to settle one of its East Coast headquarters in Long Island City, it's fired up the emotions of people who live there. They staged a protest at the proposed site of the Amazon headquarters this past week, and Katie Corrado was there.
Take that welcome mat that was rolled out for you yesterday, put it back in the package it came in, and send it back to Seattle where it belongs. Yeah.
Michael Gianaris, the state senator representing Queens, wants a refund.
The more we learn about this deal, the worse it gets.
Queens City Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer says he and other council members were kept in the dark about the Amazon deal, which would bypass the normal land use review process. Both lawmakers say Amazon's $3 billion tax credit should be put to better use, especially for the nearby Queensbridge houses.
We heard from lots of people this morning that they don't have heat in their apartments, and yet we have $3 billion and a helipad for Jeff Bezos.
They could find $3 billion like that for Amazon, but they can't help the people who are already living here, who are about to get knocked right out of this neighborhood.
So now they want to go back to the drawing board.
If that $3 billion subsidy was not there,
Would you be okay with this deal?
I've always said I'm for jobs. They should talk to us about what they're going to give to the community, not the other way around.
And they have the support of many community members and elected officials.
I'm not against anything, but what I am for is fair treatment of people who live in the neighborhood. I'm for protection of small business.
Although some did come to show their support for Amazon.
This is going to bring tens of thousands of jobs, many will be for the technocrats. But don't forget, there's security, people need security, people will need janitors.
Van Bramer says the city council will now review the deal to see what they and others can do to change it.
We are not giving up until we scuttle this deal, scrap it, throw it in the garbage, and start the conversation all over again.
And our thanks to Katie Corrado for that report. I'm back now with council member Jimmy Van Bramer and the president and CEO of Partnership for New York, Catherine Wild. We heard those protests. A lot of people, you're telling me during our break that there were a lot of myths about this. Now, one of the questions people are saying, if there's a $2.5 billion incentive being given to Amazon, people who live there say, why not put that into the infrastructure? Why not put that into the troubled transit system and help improve that? Why not the money there?
Well, Amazon will expand the tax base by some $27 billion over the next 2 decades, so they will be contributing to the city tax base. They are getting a discount. Part of the competition among the cities was to say, what is your incentive? What skin in the game have you got, city or state? And so New York has as of right incentive programs. Amazon is getting what amounts to a 10% discount off the taxes they will pay over the next 25 years. It's not a cash grant that can be moved to something else.
No cash going to them to come here?
There may be some cash going in, some grants going into some of the infrastructure in the area, but no, their advantage, their program is the state program, and is an incentive program where it reduces your taxes after you've made an investment, after you've created the jobs, but it's by a relatively small amount. As I say, they'll be paying in $27 billion, and they'll be getting a 10% discount off of that. That's what it amounts to.
Look, a discount is a discount, and 10% off of $27 billion adds up to an awful lot of money. The fact is, we as a city and we as a nation should be rethinking how we deal with people as wealthy as Jeff Bezos and companies as wealthy as Amazon. A tax break is a tax break. A subsidy is a subsidy. A cash grant is a cash grant. Ultimately, it's real money, and it adds up. And we have to, as a city and as a state, ask about priorities. And we could see fit to invest that money, that discount, into needs that truly matter more to me than lining Amazon's pockets, and that would be making sure that the people in Queensbridge, for example, which are so far getting only lip service in this memorandum of understanding and this deal, that they have heat and hot water. How about we start there? How about we address income inequality and the racial disparities that exist in this city today before we discount Amazon?
But the only way you can collect the money is to have them come here. So the discount is irrelevant. What is relevant is expanding our tax base by bringing companies like Amazon here that are the most profitable companies in the world and having them invest in our city, invest in our tax base. So it's catch-22. I don't disagree with you about it'd be great if everybody would quit offering incentives in all these cities and we didn't have that process going on. That's not the case right now. So if we want to expand our tax base, we're going to have to be competitive. Unfortunately, our competitors in this race in Virginia and in Texas doesn't have any income taxes. So they were offering a deal. They didn't have to discount anything because there was nothing to discount. Here in New York, we have the highest taxes in the country. That's the frustration that we have in competing for both talent and especially since after the loss of state and local tax deductibility in the federal tax bill.
Long term, won't this benefit New York? Won't it benefit? Will locals be among those 25,000 who are going to be hired here?
Look, there are more questions than answers. There are more holes in this deal. And we simply don't know the answers to these questions. 2 job fairs a year at Queensbridge is not the answer to that question. And what I would say is that, once again, to go back, this is about how we as a city believe, right? This is about our values. And our values have got to be about making sure that we reduce income inequality and that the extremely wealthy, like Jeff Bezos, pay their fair share. And I don't believe that it is irrelevant to say that he should not be getting these discounts or subsidies. And in fact, the people who currently live in Long Island City, Sunnyside, Astoria, Woodside, all of Queens, should be our priority. And right now, it is far from certain that they're going to be getting these jobs. And we have to ask, what will it mean for the greater community going forward? If people can't get on the 7 train today, how are we going to get them on the 7 train when 25,000 to 40,000 additional Amazon employees, not to mention any future residential developments, are competing to get on that train? That's a question that hasn't been addressed. We have a school shortage in Long Island City. That question hasn't been addressed. There are so many outstanding issues that the governor and the mayor left off the table, and they went and rushed to announce a bad deal for the people of the city of New York and a bad deal for Queens. And so we just don't know the answer to these questions. That's why the council has to get involved and assert itself, and the state government as well.
I think the questions are entirely fair that the council member is raising and can be addressed and should be addressed. I think he's absolutely right in that people should have more clarity on what this means and how you're going to take these 150,000 jobs and make sure that we have an education system that's preparing the young people for those jobs in the future. But that's, it's not, if Amazon's creating the jobs, it's our job to educate the people and figure out the workforce development programs, and we all have to work on that. We all have to share in that. And I think that Amazon, if you come to New York, if you have a big presence here as a corporation, you have to make a big contribution. And I think that's a lesson they are going to learn.
And I think, too, perhaps open discussion. I want to talk about that. Let's take a break, come back. Perhaps they should have a public forum. Let everyone come in. Let Amazon and let city officials all get together and talk it out. We'll be right back and ask that question. Back now with Catherine Wild, President and CEO of Partnership for New York, and Council Member Jimmy Van Bramer talking about Amazon coming to New York. And before the break, I brought up the thought, because there's so much concern about this, and also why wasn't everyone brought into it? It was all quiet. How about a public forum? Bring in some of the executives from Amazon, bring in the mayor, the governor, bring in members of council, bring in you, Kathy, and talk it out. Explain it. There's a lot that is, as you said, more questions than answers right now.
Well, I think this is one of the most pressing questions here. And I think public pressure is going to be such that we're going to have to open this process up to be more transparent and include the community. Obviously, we take great exception to the passage of this plan by bypassing the ULURP process, which is an established and meaningful and binding community and elected official review process. But because of the secrecy of the deal, because of how it was announced, with so little information available to the public, and because there's been so much outrage, certainly in my district in Queens, and I think really throughout the city and state, we must, and the governor and the mayor, and I think Amazon must realize that the only way to move forward here is to have more daylight, more sunlight, more transparency, and open this up and have public hearings and have town halls and have these questions answered meaningfully by these folks. You cannot rush this through. You cannot do it in a secretive way that they've done it, and you cannot exclude the community and the elected officials who represent the community.
Kathy, isn't that valid?
Well, I think it is valid, but the question is, I've been going out to Long Island City for a number of years, which Jimmy represents. They have had a lot of thinking and planning, and if you were going to make up what they really wanted to see in the development of Long Island City, Amazon properly constructed, would be, in fact, what they've been looking for. They have been looking for some major tech presence in life science and other technology things, some good jobs that the local community can be prepared and trained for and take. And so they've been looking for this kind of investment. So I think the process is the question that Councilman Van Bramer is raising. But in terms of the end game here, I think this is an opportunity that Long Island City has been looking for the last decade, and it's one that, as long as the community is involved and sees that they're getting the benefits they've been looking for in terms of workforce development and jobs and real engagement of the company, improvement of their infrastructure and transportation system. I think the end game here is one that's very positive for that community and realizes their hopes.
I'll just say I am in Long Island City virtually every day and have represented the area for 9 years as a council member. And what the people of Long Island City have been telling me for the last 9 years that they really want are school seats and new schools so that their children don't have to compete to get into pre-K or K. They want more open space, particularly in the Court Square area. We need green space. We need more options in terms of transportation and getting to and from work, both north and south and east and west. There are so many other things that the residents of Western Queens want that they haven't seen yet delivered.
Isn't part
of it?
But
it all starts with economic growth. If you don't have an economy, you're not going to have any of those.
But Amazon could exacerbate the very problems that the people of Long Island City have been clamoring for. And the truth is, there were 2 ULURPs moving forward, and they were never guaranteed. But there was a 2-year process where the community was engaged and ostensibly was being listened to, only to have both of those ULURPs pulled, merged into one general project plan, and now we're finding out lots of details about that and how the community input was disregarded and lots of things are taken off the table. This is a bad process and a bad deal that is not good for Long Island City.
Isn't part of the deal requiring Amazon to build at least one school out there?
Yes.
That's part of it.
Yes, and I think that, but the details of the deal are just, people are just learning about them. There have to be discussions. The whole point of the community conversation, I think, is absolutely right. And the vehicles for how you're going to actually engage in making sure the broad promises are achieved. The overwhelming point, though, is that cities either grow or die. Our financial services industry, our banking industry is flat right now. We've depended on that since the 1980s to pull our economy up. Tech sector is still only 7% of our economy. We need to invest in growing our tech sector because that is the future. And it's the future of jobs for our people, and it's the future of our tax base. And those of us who have been around, you and I have been around longer than Jimmy. Those of us who have been around, we lived through the 1970s, where New York lost half its Fortune 500 headquarters and lost 1 million people, and we saw neighborhoods destroyed. We have fought back, and part of the fighting back has been to bring in new industries, new headquarters, and this kind of project is a building block for our future.
It's not just about living and dying, it's about who gets to live in New York City. And that's a part of this discussion that we have to talk about as well. We have rising income inequality, we have housing prices and rents that are so expensive. If it's just about living and dying, then we're in trouble. We've got to talk about who gets to live in New York City, and it's got to be a New York City for all, and everyone's got to be able to afford to live here.
I'm getting the cue for a wrap. A quick question, because I know Speaker Corey Johnson said there's a review. There's also a bill going to be introduced in Albany to scuttle the deal. What's the action that the City Council is looking to take?
We're looking at all available options, including legal options. I think potential public hearings and all sorts of maneuvers, whether they be legislative, legal, public pressure, but the council is going to assert itself in this process as it should, and I believe the state legislature will as well.
You're looking to hear more vocal, but you're not looking to kill the deal, are you?
This deal, as it currently stands, has absolutely too problematic for us to support. We have got to start from scratch, and we've got to make sure that all the questions that we've asked are answered, and the community and the elected officials have to be involved.
I just got that cue. It tells me cut. Okay. Council member Jimmy Van Bremer and Kathy Wild, CEO of Partnership for New York. Thank you so much for your insight. And that'll do it for our program this week. You have any comments or wish to see the broadcast again, log on to our website, pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.